There was a time when America was praised as the land of dreams. A place where the son of a Cuban bartender and a casino maid could rise to become a United States senator. That story was once told with pride, as proof of opportunity, fairness, and the miracle called the American dream. And yes, Marco Rubio embodied that dream. But few could have imagined that the same man, who rose from the bottom and once believed deeply in America, would become the author of one of the harshest indictments of modern American decline. Rubio didn't just blame the Democrats. He pointed his finger at the entire system, at a decadent elite, at a hollowed-out consumer society, and at a nation losing itself from within. This video isn't here to praise or condemn. It's here to decode a paradox. How did someone built by the system become its loudest critic? And what does that reveal about power, collapse, and the fate awaiting great nations? Marco Rubio was born in 1971, in Miami, to a poor Cuban immigrant family. His father mixed drinks in hotel bars. His mother cleaned rooms and worked night shifts at a casino. They had no degrees, no savings, only one belief: that America could give their son a better life. Rubio grew up in immigrant neighborhoods, caught between two realities. On one side, poverty and financial insecurity. On the other, faith in God, family, and the promise of America. In his memoir, he wrote, "My family wasn't wealthy, but I never felt poor in love. I was privileged, not with money, but with parents who believed in my future." From a young age, Rubio was obsessed with politics. He studied political science, then law, then entered local government. By his early 30s, he was Speaker of the Florida House, one of the youngest politicians ever to hold that office. And in 2010, he stunned the establishment by defeating both the GOP-backed candidate and his Democratic rival, and entered the U.S. Senate. A meteoric rise, a modern American fairy tale. But what was behind it? Pushpin: could a system that once lifted people like Rubio still do it again? Pushpin: was that ladder still there for future generations, or had it been dismantled by the very changes America chose? This is where the story shifts. When Rubio entered the Senate in 2010, the media hailed him as the Republican Obama: young, articulate, the son of immigrants, deeply conservative, yet capable of cross-cultural appeal. To many in the GOP, he was the future, a reformer who wouldn't abandon principle. Then came 2016, the biggest gamble of his life. Rubio ran for president. The Republican elite backed him. Donors poured in. The press compared him to Kennedy. But one man blew it all up: Donald Trump. In live debates, Trump mocked his height, his voice, even his face. Rubio took the bait. He ditched logic and dignity for cheap insults. And he lost. Badly. But the real story wasn't the campaign. It was what collapsed inside him afterward. Pushpin: Rubio had believed that someone like him, disciplined, articulate, playing by the rules, could win in modern American democracy. Pushpin: what he learned instead was devastating. The system no longer rewarded self-control. It now favored chaos. And from the ashes of that failure, a different Marco Rubio began to emerge. In 2023, Rubio published a very different kind of book: Decades of Decadence. It wasn't a memoir. It wasn't hopeful. It wasn't a celebration of democracy. It was a political indictment, sharp, angry, and unforgiving. And its message was chillingly simple. America is not in decline because of enemies abroad. America is collapsing because of its own elite. So what exactly is Rubio accusing America's leadership of? That for the past 3 decades, U.S. elites, from both political parties, pursued blind globalization. Jobs were shipped overseas, factories shuttered, and the American working class was left behind. That they brought China into the World Trade Organization in 2001, hoping economic liberalization would lead to political reform. Instead, America lost its supply chains, lost its manufacturing base, and lost control. That they traded away a culture of work, discipline, faith, and family, for consumerism, cheap entertainment, and moral drift. And that today, the United States is no longer a strategic superpower, but a divided, distracted society with no clear purpose, no unified direction, and no idea what it's even fighting for. Studio microphone: Rubio writes, "We were once a nation of purpose. Now we are a nation of distraction. Once a people of sacrifice. now a people of self-indulgence. This channel isn't just here to report what's happening. Every story is a lens into power, from inside the system. So hit subscribe if you want the kind of strategic analysis you won't find in your evening news. For nearly 30 years, Rubio argues, America wasn't just passive in the face of China's rise. It actively fueled it. Pushpin. According to Rubio, in 2001, the US helped China join the WTO, hoping trade would trigger democratic reform. But instead of becoming more like America, China stayed authoritarian, tightened internal control, and used its export-driven profits to expand global influence. Rubio calls this the elite's blind faith. We believed if China became rich, it would become peaceful. In reality, they used that wealth to become more dangerous. Bullseye. China's rise, Rubio argues, was built on America's back. U.S. industries lost control over key supply chains, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, electric vehicles. Giants like Tesla, Disney, and Nike bowed to Beijing to protect profits. Even while forced labor camps in Xinjiang persisted, Wall Street, in Rubio's words, became Beijing's lobbying arm in Washington. His warning is blunt: we cannot be a superpower if we're dependent on a rival who wants to replace us. One day, China could say, we're cutting off your medicine, your iPhones, your rare minerals, and when that day comes, we won't have a choice. Rubio doesn't oppose China's rise. What he opposes is how America helped make it happen, and how unprepared the country was for what followed. In his view, this was the greatest strategic mistake committed by U.S. leadership in the last 30 years. And if nothing changes, Rubio warns that America will enter a new age of dependency. An age where it can no longer defend itself or its allies. Pushpin. Strategic analysis. This is no longer the Rubio of 2010, the hopeful reformer who believed change could come from within. This is a different Rubio, one who now sees the system that lifted him as a machine that's killing itself. He doesn't just blame his political opponents. He points fingers at his own party, at powerful corporations, at the education system, and the mainstream media, all the very institutions that once supported him. To Rubio, they didn't just make mistakes. They became the architects of American decay. Bullseye. And here lies the great irony. Marco Rubio is a textbook success story of post-war America. Yet he's now the one saying today's America is no longer the country that made him. A man once empowered by the system is now the man warning that system is falling apart. After decades of Decadence was published, Rubio was no longer a media darling. Gone were the headlines calling him a rising star or symbol of hope. Instead, many critics called him an opportunist, accusing him of exploiting public anger to stay relevant. But if you read the book closely, you'll see something different. Rubio never pretends to be an outsider. In fact, he openly admits he is a product of the very system he now criticizes. He confesses he once believed in unconditional free trade. He voted for policies he now calls mistakes. And that's exactly why, he says, he wrote the book. Not to win votes, but as a confession, a warning, and a political will for the next generation. Studio microphone. In the opening chapter, Rubio writes, I didn't write this book to win an election. I wrote it for my children, so that one day, when they ask what I did while America was changing, I can say, I spoke up. Pushpin. So who is Marco Rubio? A man who rose through America's democratic system. A politician who once clung to ideals and lost badly to Donald Trump. And now, a man trying to redefine his role, not as a party symbol, but as a lonely voice in an age of disarray. The question is, Bullseye, does he still believe change is possible? Or is he simply trying to salvage his honor in a system he now believes is rotting from the inside? Rubio once believed in classic values, optimism, institutions, the American dream, but in decades of decadence, he recalls the moment that changed everything. The day Donald Trump descended that golden escalator in 2015 to launch his campaign. Pushpin. Rubio had already launched his own bid for the presidency. His message was hope in the future. Trump's message was the opposite. America has been betrayed by its elites. It's time to blow the whole thing up. Rubio admits he was stunned by how Trump drew massive crowds without top strategists. without institutional support, and barely spending a dollar. Studio microphone Rubio writes, Trump understood the political instincts of the American people better than anyone else. While I talked about the future, he tapped into their anger. And that had power. Rubio saw in Trump what he himself once had in 2010. The spirit of an outsider, ready to challenge the old, crumbling system. But after Trump won the presidency, Rubio came to a stark conclusion. The old Republican Party is dead. No one will save America by clinging to the pre-Trump past. And yet, when Donald Trump returned to power in January 2025, no one expected the first cabinet appointment of the new administration to be Marco Rubio. On January 21st, the U.S. Senate confirmed him unanimously, 99-0, making him the first Latino Secretary of State in American history. And just months later, Trump gave him a second role, acting National Security Advisor, replacing Mike Waltz. Not since Henry Kissinger in the 1970s has one person held both posts. Now, Marco Rubio does. Pushpin as of now, Rubio holds Secretary of State, acting National Security Advisor, acting Administrator of USAID, acting Head of the National Archives. The press calls him the Minister of Everything. Trump puts it more simply. When I've got a problem, I call Marco, and he solves it. But power doesn't come without a cost. In July 2025, Rubio led the most radical restructuring of the State Department in decades. Over 1,300 employees laid off. Dozens of offices shut down. The backlash was immediate. Democratic senators called it an act of sabotage against American diplomacy. But Rubio insisted, we don't need bloated bureaucracies to chase goals the American people no longer believe in. Bullseye then. Rubio took his new power abroad. He negotiated peace terms with Russia on Ukraine. He maintained a hard line on Iran while pushing for a Gaza ceasefire. He met China's foreign minister to lay the groundwork for a Trump-Xi summit. He reassured NATO allies while still demanding more military burden sharing. In short, Marco Rubio, once mocked as Little Marco, is now the president's most trusted voice in foreign policy. Pushpin, and here's the final question. Is this Rubio's calculated political resurrection? Or is this his last chance to fix the system he once condemned? He was the man who warned of America's decline. Now, he has the chance to steer the empire in a new direction. But will he succeed? Or will the power he now holds turn him into yet another piece of the very decay he warned us about? This isn't just the story of one man. It's the story of a generation, raised by a powerful America, now watching its strength slowly unravel from within. Rubio once believed the system worked. He rose through merit, discipline, and faith in democracy's self-correcting power. But now, he's asking, Bullseye, what happens if the people in charge refuse to change? What happens when moral foundations are traded for profit? Can a country still lead the world when it's hollow at the core? Pushpin, and for Vietnamese viewers, this story holds a deeper lesson. No nation, not even a superpower, is immune to decline. Power must be maintained through clarity, humility, and strategic correction. And sometimes, the person who sounds the alarm isn't the traitor, but the last one brave enough to tell the truth. Bullseye. So here's the final question for you, the viewer. If someone like Marco Rubio, built by the system, felt compelled to write a book to sound the alarm, who will speak for those who have no voice? Who will protect a nation from its own blindness? And maybe, this isn't just America's story. Those who were once underestimated sometimes become the ones who shape history. The real question isn't how much power they hold, but how they choose to use it. Subscribe to this channel for more journeys into the people, institutions, and empires that drive the global game of power.